Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
August is Breastfeeding Awareness Month, so I am bringing you the Breastfeeding Series on That's Total Mom Sense, a 3-part series with leaders in the industry. Some people feel breast is best, and others say fed is best. And I'm here to be an objective insight and provide perspective for you, because in the end, you have to trust your mom sense. So whether you breastfeed, formula feed, pump, or use donor milk, it's entirely up to you. However, it is important to destigmatize breastfeeding in modern day society. I want you to know your options, the benefits, hear from medical professionals, public figures, and legal experts on lactation regulations in the workplace, which you can use to your advantage. I hope you feel empowered by the Breastfeeding Series on That's Total Mom Sense.
Oh, one other thing I do want to bring up is something that companies can do, which is very important amidst COVID now. In addition to providing the hospital-grade breast pumps, they can also provide special breast milk refrigerators. Most companies don't have these. So beyond just the communal fridge or beyond just that little dorm refrigerator that many companies place in lactation rooms, there are special refrigerators that you open one refrigerator door and inside are locking cabinets, like little lockers, all with separate refrigeration units to keep mom's milk protected and free, no more horror stories of someone taking someone's milk for coffee, right? That's
right.
And stuff that, we've heard way too many scary stories like that. So that's another way that employers can think about being supportive and helpful and also reduce their legal liability by setting up their lactation spaces with these fridges. And also, of course, breast milk shipping.
As moms, we often wonder, am I doing enough for my kids? I'm here to tell you, you are super mama. That's because we have an undeniable superpower, our intuition, and it never steers us wrong. I call it our mom sense. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta, and I'm the host of That's Total Mom Sense. I'm a journalist, entrepreneur, wife, and mom of 3, twins plus 1. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my podcast, I interview influential moms from various industries and cover topics that all first-time parents grapple with, from getting your baby to sleep to screen time allowance, your new normal in your marriage, and how to dedicate time to yourself. Learn and laugh along with That's Total Mom Sense. Continuing on with the Breastfeeding Series, today I'm joined by DEBI YADEGARI. DEBI is the founder and CEO of Village, spelled with a Y. Her experience juggling a challenging legal career and breastfeeding as a new mom was the muse for Village, and why DEBI is so dedicated to providing parents with the workplace support they need to pursue their professional goals while also balancing the responsibilities of new parenthood. DEBI traded her briefcase for a diaper bag in 2005 and has been supporting working parents ever since. Today, she is the leading authority on lactation accommodation law and a trusted expert on all matters working parenthood. She is a sought-after speaker and frequent contributor to Fox Networks, Working Mother Media, and various HR syndicates. Most importantly, she is a working mother of 5, ages 3, 9, 12, 13, and 15. Prior to joining the esteemed ranks of motherhood, DEBI developed a distinguished legal career. She began her career as a corporate associate in Big Law, where she specialized in security offerings within the capital markets. Subsequently, she served as counsel to the investment banking division of a leading international investment bank. While practicing law, Debbie also offered pro bono legal assistance to the New York Legal Assistance Group. Debbie received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Barnard College of Columbia University, where she double majored in economics and political science, and her Juris Doctor from George Washington University. Debbie is a certified lactation counselor with the Academy of Lactation Policy and Practice and lives on Long Island with her supportive husband and 5 children. Debbie, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, that was a very long bio.
No, I didn't want to leave any of it out. It was, I mean, all that you have achieved in your lifetime and you're not done yet is so remarkable.
Definitely not done. Definitely. It's been a journey.
Yes. Well, tell us where, your origins are. I was curious because of your last name, YADEGARI.
Yeah. So YADEGARI is Persian, and that is definitely because of my husband. It's my husband's last name that I took on. His family is amazing. They immigrated here and have built, they're one of those immigrant success stories. They built a beautiful life, raised a beautiful family. And now I'm lucky enough to raise my 5 kids, not only with the beauty of having, the American culture and freedoms, but also the beautiful background of being half Iranian. So I'm super excited to be able to pass that along to my children.
That is wonderful. I think just having that cultural awareness and being able to embrace both cultures is really, really great. Tell us about your childhood and how it has informed your life today.
Wow. Yeah, definitely has informed my life today. So I am working mom of 5, but I myself am an only child. And growing up, I lacked the family unit that I so desperately desired. So it was absolutely part of the reason that I, built what I built today, which is not just, the whole 5-kid thing, but also a business that's all about supporting working families. Its core, family is the most important thing to me. And I try to surround everything I do around those principles.
That's great. And I feel like, as Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots going forward. You have to connect them going back. And it was such a profound way to look at life and how circuitous it is. But It all makes sense. What you're doing now is what you were meant to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you said, I started my career in big law, moved in-house to investment banking. And when I became a working mom, it was a complete 2x4 up beside my head. I needed the support so desperately that I did not have. So fast forward, I created a business that was all about supporting working parents and the managers guiding those working parents. And I wasn't able to achieve what I really wanted to achieve without that support. And so I absolutely made a shift that was not obvious as I was going through that journey, but only looking back.
Yes, yes. So tell us about your motherhood journey, because you've done this 5 times over, and I'm sure every single pregnancy and experience and child and personality is so different.
It is so different. And one story that I always love to tell is my first child started off perfect. She was the kid that was asleep by 7 p.m. rather. She ate her vegetables. She was a toddler. She was brushing her teeth. And my first time at the rodeo, I had something to say to every parent because clearly I had done it perfectly, right?
What a high bar.
Right. Then enter child number 2. And I shut up very quickly. I was clearly, I have no idea what I'm doing. None.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Threw you for a loop. There's always one.
It was my daughter. It was not me. And so what 5 kids really truly gives me is perspective. So much of it is luck. So much of it is the child itself. We as parents internalize so much guilt and put so much pressure on ourselves. But it's a journey. It's, how the wind blew that day. And I think having all this experience, I'm able to just kind of laugh. And that is the biggest gift. I remember when, very different from the first, when my 5th was born, after I was back in the recovery room, it was just my husband, myself, and our little guy named Kyle. And we look at him and he started crying, one of those shrieks. And I remember the first time you dive in, stop. Our first reaction was at the same exact time. My husband and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. We were like, that's cute.
Yeah, exactly. This is what he's supposed to do. It's totally evolution.
Yeah, completely. So I started, back to your question, I started parenthood, the just crazy first time mom. The person who, if your kid fell asleep in the car seat, I would sit there in the car seat. This was before smartphones, right? I was bored sitting in the car.
Yes.
Until she woke up from her nap. And fast forward, I laughed at my crying baby. Like it's all quite a journey.
That's so great how it just, it humbles you for sure. Can you tell us about your breastfeeding experience? Because you are, a leading advocate for all things breastfeeding and lactation now. So, tell us about your personal account.
Yeah, it was difficult. I was definitely not one of the lucky ones. I feel like anyone who's like, breastfeeding was so simple. Those are also the people that give birth and have like 5 pounds to lose, right?
I know.
I do not want to talk to. I'm very, very, very type A. So even before I gave birth, I think I must have read like 2 or 3 breastfeeding books. One was like a 400-page treatise. I remember reading it on my baby moon with my husband. And my husband was like, why are you reading that? And he came to eat his words later on. I was struggling. I was like, thank goodness I read it.
Right. So well researched.
And I also had taken like a prenatal breastfeeding class. I wanted to learn. But at the end of the day, it's like trying to learn how to ride a bike by reading a 400-page treatise. Like it doesn't work. Like, I understood the concepts theoretically, but I struggled. And the thing with breastfeeding is you don't struggle until you're truly struggling, because in the hospital, clearly, my first child didn't have a great latch and things were not off to a good start, but I didn't know that. And it wasn't until I was home with sore nipples and breasts, crying in agony, that I realized that I was really in trouble. So luckily, all of the legwork that I had done prenatally had guided me to the point where I knew where to get help. So very early on, that first week home, I took my daughter to a breastfeeding support class. And there I am, like shirt off, like we're not accustomed to this, right? We're not accustomed to having other people look at our breasts as much as we want to be, as much as we want to think that we're forward thinking and we're comfortable with these things. How many of us have actually seen a baby breastfeed before you become a mom, right?
Yeah.
After you become a mom, if it's your best friend, if it's your sister, we tend to our eyes look away, the person breastfeeding covers up. You don't really, really see it. And so here I was, like shirt off, stranger comes up and like grabs my breast, sticks my nipple in my baby's mouth. And it was like relief. It was like, she taught me what to do and it did not hurt.
Yes.
And wow, this is life-changing. And I went on to breastfeed for about 1.5 years. And it was a turning point. I was about to throw in the towel. And of course, if you dive into the science, there's so much out there that will show that it's, healthier for a baby to have breast milk than formula. But I was really at like a fork in the road where I was like, I can't do this. And it was much easier the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. After that, it was easy. But that first time, it stuck with me. It's still with me today. I remember the pain. Yeah. Remember the heartache, the agony. And it was when I walked away from investment banking, it was in part because I didn't have the support of a corporate structure to support me in my breastfeeding. Because after all of that, I had continued to breastfeed. I had created a huge stash. I was living in New York City and there was like a blackout. I lost my stash, a heart, knife in the chest, right. But I still had a few months before I went back to work, and I was working to get that stash going, and I went back to work, and I had an awkward conversation with my boss. There wasn't real, I skirted around the issue of breast pumping in the office because that's really awkward, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to have that conversation, and my boss didn't raise it with me, but I did talk about maybe having some flexibility, because while going to investment banking was definitely a lifestyle step up from big law, it was still a 12-hour day. I was still working 8 to 8. And any mom out there knows babies kind of sleep, 7 to 7. So which meant Maybe
you're just not sleeping.
Right.
Oh
Well,
my
or
God.
like I wouldn't see my child.
Yeah.
And yeah, not to say that they sleep from 7 to 7, but there's wake ups in between. So 6 months later, I ended up walking away. I never returned back to work. And it was in part because of breastfeeding. It was in part because of the lack of support. And this was an idea that always like weighed on me because I never saw myself as being somebody who's going to walk away after working so hard in school, after working so hard in my career to like climb the ladder and take those steps that I thought were going to set me up for the next opportunity. I just left. And when I left, I saw that lots of women had left. And I was like, wow, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And the Affordable Care Act passed. That was the first piece of legislation to give working women the right to pump in the office federally. So some states had already passed laws previous to the passage of the Affordable Care Act, but that was the first countrywide rule that said working moms have a right to pump in the office. And that means, employers, you have to give moms the time they need and the space they need. The space cannot be a bathroom and the space better be private, like free from intrusion. And so I saw this as an opportunity, given my personal experience. At that point, I had 4 children, my struggles with breastfeeding, my legal background, and I had also, because I'm so type A, had gone on to become a certified lactation counselor at that time. And I put together everything and it was like, let's change corporate America. So it started, what Village does today is support working parenthood holistically. We do so much. We work with companies to change culture, work with policies, we train managers, all sorts of stuff. But where it started, its roots were truly within the corporate lactation space because it was still a topic of conversation that was very uncomfortable.
Yes, and lacking.
Yeah, so lacking. And my oldest daughter now just turned 16. I apologize. The bio must have been forwarded to you before her birthday. She just turned 16. So 16 years ago, the laws were very different, but sadly, some of the experiences are still the same at many places of employment. We still have a long ways to go, but what is changing is the laws are evolving. So right. We've seen not just the passage of the Affordable Care Act, but we've seen states popping up, and not just states, but also municipalities with their own sets of rules. So for instance, New York City requires that every employer have a written corporate lactation accommodation policy. So you can be a company that's like all men, doesn't matter. Everyone needs to know and be aware of what that lactation accommodation policy is, in part because this changes culture. So if the company was to take on a female or a breastfeeding woman or, someone to become pregnant, it becomes a natural part of the conversation that everybody there just expects that the company is going to do something. The onus is on the company, as opposed to when I started my journey where the onus was on the employee to have to advocate for themselves. Now, the onus is definitely still on the employee to advocate for themselves today, but we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
Yes. Could you tell us how the laws vary state by state?
Sure. Every state, like I said, requires an employer to provide the employee with the time and the space. Depending on the state, that time is either paid or not paid. So for instance, in Illinois, your breaks will be paid. In other states, your breaks will not be paid. In San Francisco, you need to have a written lactation accommodation policy. But in addition to having that, there's a requirement that employers keep on file every request for 3 years. So if somebody comes in and has this conversation, it has to be documented. Well, that definitely changes culture, right? Because if I think back to my situation where it was this awkward thing that was never brought up, and bad on me too, today you have to create a system that empowers managers to know how to talk about these things because they know they're going to have to turn it around and put it in a file, electronic file. But how did you handle that? And that needs to be kept on file for 3 years. Baltimore and New York City and many other cities require that the lactation space be in close proximity to running water and refrigeration.
Smart.
Yeah. So that's great. The rules vary on what is required. So some states also will say that there's a no retaliation policy. So if somebody raises a stink, you can't turn around and punish them. In California, there are fines associated with not having the proper setup, daily fines, if you don't have the proper setup for a lactating employee. So there's like slight nuances in all jurisdictions, but the heart of it is time and space for the breastfeeding employee. And then on top of that, hopefully the laws also require, you get the space has to be in close proximity to lactation and running water. And hopefully some things have to be kept on file. And hopefully they're putting out written policies to everybody within the organization. And at the bottom of it, we hope more than, any of these written policies or laws, we hope that there's a culture that's just supporting breastfeeding women, because whether something is documented within the statutes or not, that's what's going to make a difference, is the culture more than anything else.
Yes. What is Village actually focusing on? How does the company help employers provide, lactation facilities safely and effectively, and what's actually the right way to do it?
Sure. So Village does a lot within the corporate lactation space. First off, we work with companies with thinking through what needs to be done. We will provide corporate lactation audits and assess what companies have and what they need to have to be in compliance with their federal, state, and local laws. From there, we will work with them to put together a written lactation accommodation policy, whether it's required in their municipality or not. It's something that all employers should have on file. And then we talk about the build out of the actual space itself. Breastfeeding employees should have access to a hospital-grade breast pump. That's very different than the breast pumps that are provided through insurance. It's the equivalent of having we're talking a budget car versus like a Ferrari engine. It's
heavy duty. I used it with the twins, so I know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what employers don't realize is it's such like a drop in the bucket when it comes to as far as expenditures go. It's very, very cheap. But what it does is it allows mom to pump more milk in less time. Translation, she gets out of that lactation room and back doing whatever she wants to do, because no matter how committed you are to breastfeeding, I've yet to meet a mom who enjoys pumping. It is awful, right?
Yes,
Nobody likes that, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And she doesn't have to schlep her pump.
Yes.
Because it's in the room already.
Yes. And it's cleaner, it's more efficient. And a lot of times people always get caught up with that. We're like, is it cleaner? Is someone sharing it? So hospital grade breast pumps have a closed circuit system. So milk cannot travel between the tubing. So there's less chance of exposure to mold and mildew than mom using her own personal pump. Right. And the shared pump that sits in the lactation room, it's just a machine. Mom comes along and plugs her plastic parts and tubing into the machine, and the tubing never even touches the milk. So the part that touch is her contraption, that touch her body, touch the machine, but there's so much buffer there. So there's zero chance of contamination from somebody else's milk. And right now, the big topic is the return to office. And how do you create safe lactation spaces amidst COVID-19 and the various variants that we're encountering? We want to, as much as possible, increase circulation to these rooms. If there's a window, open the door in between use, have all surfaces wiped down upon entry, upon exit, the same rules that we were accustomed to in the early days where we were a little bit paranoid. Those are the rules that we should be incorporating into the shared lactation spaces now, just out of an abundance of caution.
We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you have a man that spends hours in the gym, heads into the office early, or is just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has their back. Head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
REI Co-op presents a perfect outdoor moment with the perfect gift.
Woo!
Picture this. You're ripping with your favorite person. Bluebird skies, blower powder, and frankly, you're skiing like legends.
So sick. Another lap?
Thanks to REI's curation, from lid to sticks, you nailed the gift.
No way. How'd you know?
Does it get more perfect than that? Give without guessing. Shop in store or visit rei.com.
Breastfeeding is an enigma for a new mom, and for a mom of multiples like me, I know each experience is different because each child is different. Thank goodness for the Breastfeeding Shop. Founder and CEO Patty Gatter made it her mission to help moms navigate their journey through motherhood, focusing on all things breastfeeding, lactation, and postpartum support. Now, there are dozens of breast pumps on the market. Should you consider a wearable pump, a backpack, or rent a hospital grade? The Breastfeeding Shop will not only help you figure out what's best for you, the company serves as an intermediary between mom and her insurance provider, so she's equipped with a pump, lactation support, and all the accessories for free, so she doesn't have to pay anything out of pocket. With 24/7 telehealth, you now have a listening ear around the clock to help you through the challenges, so you feel like yourself again and can bask in all the joys a new baby at home brings. Visit thebreastfeedingshop.com to learn more. I remember you sharing an instance with me where a company thought it was perfectly fine to have a lactation section attached to the bathroom, but for sanitary reasons, that's not okay. So tell us what happened with that and why they even thought that that was okay.
Yes. Well-intentioned employers, well-intentioned managers, sometimes they just make the wrong calls. So there was a build out, a new company was doing a large build out of office space, and they got in touch with us after the architecture had been designed, everything had been framed, everything was nearly finished. And they knew that they wanted to provide lactation spaces to their employees because they didn't check the law, but they'd kind of heard around the grapevine that this is something that they should be doing. And they built every bathroom on every floor to contain a lactation space within the bathroom. Now, every law out there on the books say that employers must provide space and time to the breastfeeding employee, and that space cannot be a bathroom. I can't even imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that this company spent on adding this area to the bathroom on every floor, and it's illegal, right?
Yes.
There, we had many conversations on how they could segment the sinks in the lactation space from the toilets in the back.
Right.
But, that gets into a gray area, right? As soon as you walk in and you see that there's sinks and you walk through another doorway and there's toilets, that's a bathroom.
Yes.
In that circumstance, a lot of things, they're not black and white. And I know this when I worked in-house as a lawyer, when I was at a law firm, we can't always come in and tell our clients, look, you cannot be doing this. A lot of times it's a business choice. We know that when it comes down to recalls with companies at the consumer level, it's a business decision. So we advise them on the risks, the potential liability. They took our advice and did with it what they would. But the most important thing for employers when they're dealing with these types of situations is to, again, create that culture of understanding, that supportive of the working parent. Perhaps that there would be some breastfeeding employees would be like, okay, great, there's a sink area.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call this a bathroom, but maybe somebody else would call them out on it. And the employer has to realize that they would need to find a conference room or some other space to meet that employee's needs. And that's absolutely required under the law. So, sometimes there's tough conversations that we have to have with very, very, very well-intentioned employers.
Yes. So then for an existing space, should the company convert a conference room into a lactation space? Is that the way to do it? Because, they don't have the plumbing for the sinks and all of that. So is that something that we have to kind of take at face value, that the woman will have to go to the kitchen or another area to wash her pump parts, but then she's able to pump in a place that's secluded, tinted, private?
Correct. I mean, it really depends on the individual space and locale of the company. And all of the laws talk about the necessitating water and refrigeration within close proximity. None of the laws say it actually has to be within the space. And close proximity has yet to be defined by the courts. As is a lot of times, this leaves, it's open to interpretation and becomes a gray area. What is close proximity? If you have to go to another floor, if like a company is 4 floors, the communal kitchen is on the top floor and someone's breastfeeding on the bottom floor, I don't think that's close proximity. You know, so what are you going to do there? At the end of the day, again, it goes back to conversations that employers must have with employees on making the employee feel comfortable and bending over backwards. If the employee is going to have to travel up to the 4th floor where the communal kitchen is to have access to that running water and maybe set up a conference room up there, make sure the manager is going to allow them extra space and leeway to travel between the floors or a little bit of extra break time. Right. The idea is to just have that understanding amongst people. And one other thing I do want to bring up is something that companies can do, which is very important amidst COVID now. In addition to providing the hospital-grade breast pumps, they can also provide special breast milk refrigerators. Most companies don't have these. So beyond just the communal fridge or beyond just that little dorm refrigerator that many companies place in lactation rooms, there are special refrigerators that you open one refrigerator door and inside are locking cabinets, like little lockers, all with separate refrigeration units to keep mom's milk like protected and free, no more horror stories of someone taking someone's milk for coffee, right? That's right. And stuff that, we've heard way too many scary stories like that. So that's another way that employers can think about being supportive and helpful and also reduce their legal liability by setting up their lactation spaces with these fridges. And also, of course, breast milk shipping. Breastfeeding moms probably are still refraining from travel, at least, not as much as they used to before COVID, but things are beginning to open up. And if employers can provide a little bit of assistance when moms travel to ship ahead hospital grade breast pumps to where she's staying and assist mom with shipping her breast milk back home, that's all great. And Village does all of that if anybody wants more information or to learn more.
That's wonderful. How do you advocate for the employees for companies that are not part of like corporate per se? So let's say there's an employee who works at McDonald's. She's a mom who wants to breastfeed. Where's a safe place for her to go to breastfeed? Pump rather, sorry.
Yes, it becomes much more difficult. And maybe it is breastfeed, right? Like maybe, depending who has the child, maybe somebody can come meet her and she can sit at a park bench, assuming she's in living in a temperate area where it's the right season and she can go outside and actually breastfeed. That is, for some people, that could be a great option. It becomes much stickier when you're talking about retail or food establishments because they don't always have the space to offer up a lactation room. So the question for managers then becomes, is there a temporary space that can be used? And is that temporary space free from intrusion? There have been lawsuits where there have been fast food establishments who said, fine, go use the manager's office. Well, no surprise. Oftentimes when you have a retail space like that in a manager's office, that manager's office often has a camera. Right. So that's not free from intrusion. And that was something that the mom wasn't necessarily thinking about. And, the story goes downhill from there. It ended in a lawsuit. And so if you're going to take over, is there a space? Can we disclose all cameras? Can we turn off the cameras? Can we cover the cameras in order to give mom privacy? One option. If we're talking about, let's say, a mall, is there a lactation space within the mall that's outside of that retail establishment itself? Sometimes we have to be a little bit clever, but again, it always goes back to having that conversation between the employee and the employer to be supportive. Sometimes it's going to be allowing mom a little bit of extra time to be able to accomplish what she needs and what she is, has a right to accomplish under the law.
Yes. Breastfeeding moms really have no idea oftentimes whether their employer has a policy, and if they do, whether or not it's in compliance with the laws of their state. So how can a breastfeeding mom locate her company policy and cross-reference her company's policy with the laws in her state?
check your employee handbook. The employee handbook should include the lactation accommodation policy. Now, it doesn't always, because sometimes the employee handbooks will just come from like a Bamboo HR or ADP, or not to put anything down by ADP or Bamboo HR. I don't necessarily know that they do not contain a lactation accommodation policy, but sometimes the employee handbooks are just they're turnkey at some companies. Ask HR before you go out on leave, what is this company's lactation accommodation policy? And if something seems a little bit off, if HR seems confused, if HR doesn't have one, if HR just kind of brushes it off and says, oh, just talk to your manager, dig deeper. You can do a quick Google search and just search lactation accommodation laws by state. There's several websites that will come up and you'll be able to click on your state and find out the exact laws. Of course, you can always reach out to us, hello@village.com, email us. We can help point you in the direction and give you some guidance. We can also reach out to your employer. But at the end, I feel like a broken record. I'm always going back to it. It's not necessarily we don't want to slap the employer's hand, but just have a little bit of backing to open up a conversation, of a dialogue. And perhaps HR doesn't know that they're not in compliance. Most of the time, I would argue, HR has no idea that they're not in compliance with lactation accommodation laws where they are.
Exactly. And when you discover that, if a mother were to discover that, then what are her rights in all of this?
Sure. Her rights are to get what she deserves under the law. So engage in a conversation and lay out what she expects to happen. She needs to pump 3 times a day, and this is what she expects, and she expects the employer to work with her. If she receives pushback, she can turn to the EEOC and file a complaint and receive guidance there.
Okay. I feel like a lot of breastfeeding moms are probably reticent to have conversations with their managers because it's awkward. So how do you navigate that conversation? Do you have any pointers on exactly what to say?
If you are not comfortable, start by email. That is the least confrontational. And it's not one of those topics that really needs to happen face to face if it's just a matter of fact. So begin with first reach out to HR and ask what the policy is before you even go out on leave. And then notify your manager that if hopefully your manager has already reached out to you, but if they haven't, notify your manager and explain that you will be returning from leave. You were a breastfeeding mom and you're going to need to take breaks, whatever your schedule is, depending on your work schedule, 3-4 times a day. You may or may not have to explain it to your manager every 3 hours. These are my biological needs. You don't need to explain it. You do not need to defend yourself or your rights. So that's just your comfort level. And then ask them, is there a space for me? What is the best way to notify you of when I'm going to be on break? Do you need to be notified? Again, depending upon your role, you may or may not need to notify your manager. You can just go to the lactation room, take care of your needs. If it's something where you actually have to punch out because, let's say, you're a customer service rep on a phone, then you are going to need to have that conversation, and there's going to need to be a system in place so team members can cover for you.
Right, exactly. And how should breastfeeding employees handle business travel? I know you touched on it a little bit, but again, what they should kind of prepare for that.
Sure. Plan. Yes, definitely prepare. Number one, time zones. Think about time zones. That's something that a lot of employees will not consider. If they're flying from California to New York, stay on the time, keep your pumping schedule on the time zone of home. So sometimes that's not so comfortable. Sometimes that means you're pumping early morning, extra late at night, and you want your pumping schedule to mimic that during your workday when you're away. And for most breastfeeding employees, that means that they're pumping during the day and breastfeeding when they're home. So pump at the times that you would breastfeed your child if you were home at those times. Mm-hmm. That will ensure maintenance of your milk supply, keeping it on the same schedule at the same frequency, and make sure that you have access during travel to a very, very, very robust pump, because there's nothing as efficient as a baby. Second to that is the hospital grade breast pump. Third to that is the personal pump. So if you can make the ask to your employer to set you up with a hospital grade breast pump while you're traveling, that is great. And then make arrangements in advance if you need to ship your breast milk home to your baby. If you're only gone for a night or two, perhaps you can just store it and bring it home yourself on the plane. But if you're going to be needing to feed your baby with that milk, if you're gone for a week or 2 or 3, then you definitely want to create a system with your caregiver on how to rotate the milk in, if it has already, and depending on how long it has been refrigerated and the method of shipment, it will depend upon whether you can throw it in the freezer and still store it, or it should be used immediately upon arrival. And then how long can it last if it's been in your hotel fridge for 2 days and then you're shipping, let's use that milk within 4 days by the time it arrives home with baby. So there are a few variables there that planning can absolutely assist with, but get in touch with your lactation consultant for assistance. Of course, again, you can always reach out to Village, but think about it in advance.
Yes, that's really, really great advice. I want to just talk about traveling in general when you are, a lactating mom, with the, security measures in place and, the allowance of liquids, whether it's 2 or 3 ounces of liquids. Many mothers are, the security guards literally spill their milk out, or, they're faced with a situation like that and you can't take it on your carry-on and it has to be checked in. So do you know any regulations around that now?
Yes, the laws have come a long way. And luckily, there are protections for breast milk, and mothers are able to travel with breast milk. Typically, if you're carrying it on, it still has to be checked. They will not open the lids, but they will swipe the sides of the container. It's sometimes, ironically, they will give you more of a problem if you don't have a child with you, which is the whole reason why you're traveling with breast milk, right?
Right.
So my suggestion is immediately when you get through that security line, ask for a supervisor. Even before you start putting things through the x-ray, ask for a supervisor. So a supervisor will have more experience and be able to guide you a lot better than having to initiate that argument and then elevate the situation.
Right. And then let's talk about actually being on the plane. So do you have any pointers on pumping while on the plane? I mean, I know we've all done it. We've all seen it. You just have a cover. Hopefully you get a window seat and you try to be discreet about it. But it's still, I feel like there needs to be regulations around that too, because, you're in this public place and you're trying to cover up, but the onus shouldn't be on the mom. Yeah. It's just, that really angers me.
I agree. And it's a very difficult situation. So depending on the size of the the size of the airplane, rather, if you have a true jumbo jet that's flying internationally, maybe you can ask the flight attendant if there is one of those spaces with curtains where the flight attendants take naps that you use. Perhaps there is some space like that on the plane.
Maybe.
Yes, that'd be great. I'm a big proponent of taking the cover and pumping in your seat. Hopefully, it's a family member next to you and not a stranger. Nobody really wants to be pumping in the bathroom, but I know many breastfeeding moms who feel just more comfortable in the privacy there, to the extent that you have to do that. I mean, if you are one of those moms, I would bring truly trash bags from home and keep plastic down over everything. So there's not touching any surfaces, big, plastic. But yeah, planes are absolutely they're more difficult.
They are. And I'm hoping that over time, there is some sort of setup where, women get the opportunity to breastfeed and pump comfortably while on flight. So you have spoken about how breastfeeding has an impact on a company's bottom line. What should employers care about when it comes to breastfeeding? Truly, what is in it for them?
Oh my goodness, so much savings that they don't even realize. It's always a surprise to hear that the American Academy of Pediatrics has found that for every $1 an employer invests in their corporate lactation program, they're going to return $3. And that is because of reduced healthcare costs and reduced absenteeism. So we know that breastfed babies are healthier babies, but what statistics show is that reduces the amount of pediatrician visits by half.
Wow.
Breastfed babies, when they're little kiddos, are going to the doctor half as many times. Think about, as a mom, how many times you take your kid to the doctor. Compare that with how many times you yourself go to the doctor, right? It does not compare. Maybe adults go once a year, children go endless times a year, right? So
Yes.
if we're dividing those endless times in half, the healthcare bill to the employer is going to significantly drop, because the highest expenditure within any company are pediatrician visits. You couple that with the fact that when a mom breastfeeds, it reduces her chance of developing long-term illnesses, such as relating to heart disease, diabetes, various cancers. It's amazing. It's kind of like when we start breastfeeding, Mother Nature gets the memo. Okay, we've got to protect mom, right? It's like,
Yes.
we've got to come and put our arms around mom and protect her too. So insulates mom from health issues. It insulates baby from health issues. Well, if you're not sick and you don't need to go to the doctor, you're not absent as much. And if you're not, and so when moms take sick days and are absent, it's for themselves and it's also for the baby. So by installing a great corporate lactation program, you're going to reduce absenteeism that mom spends on her own sick days, on days that mom spends being with a sick baby. You're going to reduce healthcare costs, and it's just going, and on top of all of that, it drives retention, it drives loyalty, and attrition costs companies around the United States trillions of dollars every year. It absolutely impacts the bottom line, and positively, very, very, very positively.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the exodus that has happened due to COVID of women in the workforce, I think it's up to 5 million now that have left. I mean, the majority, I feel like have young babies at home, and with the childcare crisis and with the need to breastfeed and provide them sustenance was like a big reason for them staying home. So I think if an employer sets up, a woman, a lactating mother, with these amenities and this allowance, it's huge. She's going to want to continue working, and we'll figure it out somehow.
Absolutely. And especially now, it's more important than ever. Many studies have shown that vaccinated moms, or moms that have come down with COVID-19, they have certain protective properties in their breast milk that protect baby. And we all know children under 12 cannot get vaccinated. So while young children are not getting, for the most part, deathly ill, we don't know what the long-term consequences are. So as we return to the office, breastfeeding moms absolutely want to, for the most part, continue, because they understand the protections that are being afforded to their little ones. Mm-hmm. So to the extent that employers can support that, it becomes win-win. And it's going to help, fight against what has been dubbed the Great Resignation, with everybody leaving.
Right. Tell us about a mom sense moment that you've had. And I'm sure you have them throughout the day with all of your children. But is there one that sticks out in your mind where you just trusted your intuition and it steered you on the right path?
We have a house alarm in the house. We heard the alarm go off, and oftentimes the kids are turning the alarm off to go grab water from the garage or what have you, and then they turn it back on. But the alarm went off, and a few minutes later, I had a weird feeling. This was late at night, and I poked my husband and I said, "Go check on Daniela, who's our 12-year-old." And he was like, "No, I'm tired. Everything's fine. Someone got water." And like, no, go check on her. Something's wrong. Go check on her. And he came running back to our bedroom. He's like, "She's not in her bed." And it was like probably close to midnight, 11 o'clock. I don't know how, it was dark out, and she was not in her bed. And so immediately I'm calling her. We have Life 360 to track her. Can't find her. And I called her best friend who she was with, and they were waiting at midnight for the sun to rise. In our backyard. Kind of silly, kind of sweet. This couple of 12-year-olds put together a bucket list, but my mom's sense told me to check on her when the alarm went out. I don't know why. My husband thought it was just some kid getting water, but I And then I specifically said, check on Daniela.
Interesting. Oh my goodness.
And then I knew to call this friend who's, I hope the mother who doesn't know the story is not listening to this.
Yeah. I love it. But it just, it was what you needed to figure it out. You just trusted that.
But beyond that, it's always like, my son hasn't eaten. Let me check on him. We all get those little moments. Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Let's not forget our quote of the day.
Do you have a quote that you live by?
Especially as working parents, sometimes we feel like we're on a hamster wheel or we don't get to spend enough time with our children. And I think the most important thing is to just stop to smell the flowers. Let me take that one. Like make a memory, like, something that you can carve out. Like maybe you weren't there every day to play Legos, but you went outside to smell the flowers, or you had that one moment that you can point back to that was really cool, of jumping on the trampoline before bedtime in pajamas or something fun. Like that, make memories.
That's so sweet. In the notes, you wrote Team YADEGARI. Do you want to mention that too?
Oh, Team YADEGARI. Was that one of my quotes? Yeah. So Team YADEGARI, as I think I mentioned early on when we were talking, I am an only child. I do not understand why siblings would ever fight. I would growing up, all I wanted was a sibling. So I do not understand sibling friction. So whenever they start to break down or fight, I'm like, we're Team YADEGARI. My crocodile tears will come out, and I will absolutely always push on that button. I remember one time we actually traveled to Disney World about before COVID, about a year before COVID. The kids were, getting out of hand. So like any crazy mom does, we take all the electronics. Collected all the electronics, no electronics for you. They were really cute. They spent a few hours together, and they came back to me and created this whole Team YADEGARI chant and rap all about how they're Team YADEGARI and they live for each other and love for each other. Like, they ended up winning the electronics back by the end of the day. But yes, Team YADEGARI is a concept that I absolutely try to push amongst my children. I want them to know that they're not here living amongst family members in silos. They are part of a team. We are Team YADEGARI.
Oh, I love that. I think that's really, really great advice for parents.
It's now time for Mom Haul, when we share products we love.
And Mom Haul, is there a product or gadget or anything that you're just loving right now that you want to share with the audience?
My watch, my Apple Watch. It's like you get to look at your electronics without really using your electronics.
Yes.
That way you don't have to be, the person who's telling your kids not to have their electronics at the table or whatever. But that something might come through. It might be another kid who's not home, a work call. You're able to just quickly look at your wrist. So Apple Watch, I live for it.
I like that. Yeah. You get to be so discreet.
Yes. I'm working on the discreetness, but yes.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And where can my listeners find you?
Look for us at Village, all social media. That's VILLYGE. And of course, our website, village.com, or you can follow me. I'm just Debbie YADEGARI.
Great. Debbie, thank you so much for today's chat. You gave us so much insight and advice and knowledge on what we can expect, especially those who maybe in the dark a little bit. And the work that you're doing is instrumental in creating change for all of us as a society. And I applaud you for that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those words so much. Thank you.
So now do you feel ready for back to school? You will be when you go shopping on mabelslabels.com. As I mentioned earlier, I love the personalized stamps and the shoe labels, which are stickers cut in halves so your kids can have fun putting the shoes side by side and matching the stickers. As Julie mentioned, use my exclusive code MOMSENSE10 in all caps for 10% off site-wide at mabelslabels.com. Tune into other episodes and browse my YouTube videos and blog posts on my website, that'stotalmomsense.com.
I do want to give a shout out to Ratui, who left a wonderful review on Apple Podcasts. She writes, great host and podcast. This podcast is so helpful and motivating. Congrats to Kanika for creating an amazing platform for moms. Thank you so much, Ratui. And email me your address to thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com, and I will send you some very special merch. Remember, always trust your mom sense. Stay strong, super mamas. See you next time.
That's total mom sense.